Oh, that's annoying. Okay. So it's written private, but if you don't want to, it's just for people to kind of people volunteer to see what's happening. It's only for you. So can I only stream you?
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah.
Okay, morning everybody. My name is Phil. I think we haven't met yet.
No,
Cool. Everybody else knows me already. Today I'm going to talk to you about entrepreneurial strategy. Why? Because I'm teaching that since now 2 years at UCL as well, together with my professor Ken Jing. So I do them for undergrad because I don't have a PhD and plus I'm not allowed to teach postgraduate. But I think you will still take a bit of this talk. I know a little bit. Who of you guys has a business background? Basically already knows a bit about strategy. Okay, quite a few. Then so you probably heard already of Porter, Weinhocker. Okay, that's very good. So we're not going to talk about that. That's good. And then at least know, okay, we have something to talk about. It's really great. Cool. Do you guys know these two companies, Coinbase and Ripple? Very hot right now, right? With all the Bitcoins going through the roof, the Ether's going crazy. So these two companies are quite in the middle of what is going on right now. The whole Bitcoin craze or cryptocurrency craze. Coinbase on one side was found to be kind of a wallet for Bitcoins, Ethers, and other cryptocurrencies out there. But Ripple, they chose a different approach. They wanted to leverage the blockchain and underlying technology and build their own cryptocurrency on top. So with these two companies, we basically see already a strategic division. Right? So on one side, adopting a proposed standard and become a one-stop shop for people who want to use that standard, being able to trade Bitcoins and other cryptocurrencies. While Ripple chose a different path. They chose to create a lock-in, to create a platform that they own with a standard they own. Right? That's what we're going to talk about today. So you have choices to make about what company you want to be. And these choices eventually lead to a certain end, while locking other choices and other options out. Now, to find out how to get there and what your options actually are, that's what entrepreneurial strategy is about. So basically what we talk about today is the challenge of innovation-based entrepreneurship is not only coming up with great ideas, which we already have, right? But it's about how to find out how to capture value of these ideas. Recap. Strategy is about choosing from all alternative visions, Coinbase or Ripple, build upon the standard or beat the standard, and to build an idea from the company. Does anybody know the paradox of entrepreneurship? Good, that's good. I feel like I can teach something here. I like that. Okay, so basically the paradox of entrepreneurship says that in order to be able to move forward with your company, you need to iterate. And these iterations show a certain path of options, basically giving you knowledge. With each iteration you gain that. But in order to be able to perform these iterations, you have to go a certain path, basically already locking out other possibilities. I know I'm repeating myself a little bit here, but I really feel that it's kind of the important thing here to get started. So the paradox of entrepreneurship, you more and more. So strategy always about the choice and the trade-off. And that's something you will see again and again and again in your entrepreneurial journey. Whenever you go for this customer, maybe another customer don't find it attractive anymore. Or now if you build for SMBs, maybe you can't integrate for a large enterprise anymore, right? It's choices you have to make that always comes with trade-offs. Again, that's for you later on. Good. Again, illustration, choice matters. You have an idea, you can go left or you can go right. What these icons are, I'm going to explain in a bit. So basically, the choices you make, they matter. And Scott Stern from MIT has researched the last 20 years. What are the choices that actually matter for entrepreneurs? So Scott Stern is actually the guy who cares about you. While Porter cares about big corporations and how to build a company that is sold for 650 million, by the way. He built concepts that are very well suited for the 80s for building a consultancy at home. Right? So you can sleep well as a manager. And they are very well applicable for airlines, for all these, etc. Companies that are established. They also have the resources to implement certain strategies. That does not certainly apply to you guys because your resources are extremely scarce and you operate in different means than these big corporations. Now, he looked the last 20 years into what can we actually offer and talked to thousands of entrepreneurs, mainly in the US, but all over the world, and came up with this canvas. So you have basically 4 choices to make. Who are you competing with? What is your market? Who are your customers? Who do you want to make business with? How do you serve them? What is your enabling technology with them? And basically, who do you want to be as yourself? What is your vision? Which talent do you want to attract? Who do you want to work with? And who do you don't want to work with? And that boils basically down to 2 things. On one side, the value creation hypothesis. How do these choices that we make create value in a certain ecosystem? And how do we make money out of that? And today we're going to talk about these 4 choices along certain profiles or certain models. And then we're quickly going to talk about the other 2 things and kind of what it boils down to depending on the choices you make. You don't have to write that. I give you all the slides. That's why it's also not beautiful slides with like pictures. I feel great. It should be a handout for you afterwards. Good. First choice, customer. You see, green. You guys know the product adoption curve, right? So you always, wherever you start, you will serve a small group of innovators that are excited by your product, that are okay with the fact that it's not perfect yet. They become enthusiastic, they become ambassadors, they might recommend it, write blogs about it, whatever. Then you got early adopters that prefer a slightly more refined product, but are still okay with being a bit first, brag about the new iPhone to their friends, right? It's like, while the majority, the early majority and the late majority, they're still waiting until maybe iPhone 2nd generation was out. They didn't buy it for them. So they wait a bit, but the novelty of the product is already going down, right? So you need to find ways here how to serve the next innovators, right? Who buys your next product? So that's basically the product adoption curve. However, you get the choice you make, whether you go this way or this way, you always have to deal with customers in that way. You have always the innovators in the beginning, then the early adopters, early majority, and the laggards that even so iPad 5 is out, still buy iPads, even so nobody knows what to do. Sorry, good passion. Second choice you have to make is the innovation trajectory / the technology you are going to use. Because the technology you're going to use defines your adoption curve, right? It's how quickly you can exploit the product you're building from a certain group of customers. So I would say that's going to be slow, yeah, maybe more traditional. Right? You invest and you build a restaurant, first few customers, get established, but it's also capped at a certain level, right? Because maybe it's not that scalable. While you have other technologies, once you're there, your product is working, It's infinitely scalable. See Facebook, right? Then you can iterate upon that, and then basically when you're here, you build the next trajectory by implementing the next technology. So that's the choice you have to make. It's your identity. That is often overseen, especially in academia or what you normally hear about strategy. But that's absolutely fundamental. Who do you want to be, and what does your company stand for? Because that basically allows you to attract certain people, especially developers, for example, are extremely opinionated who they want to work for. You want to create the right environment. That's not about having free club mate and I don't know, a football team. Right? It's about the values you represent. Because these values then not only attract talent, but that forms your vision, your mission, and eventually your value proposition, with which you go out into the market and attract customers as well. So there are like basically 4 points. It's about the ecosystem you want to be in. It's about the position. How do you want to achieve your objectives? It's about team culture, incentives, organizational design. And the most important one, what do you stand for? What is your mission? Why do you actually found this company? And what do you tell your co-founders, your employees, and your investors? Why are you believable? Lastly, who do you want to compete with? Gentleman protecting against the birds, so he chose the birds. Argument that is a good choice or not, but it certainly is a competition because it has an impact on how much you can harvest from that tree. Now, if that is the best solution to it, we don't know, right? But if you choose your competition, it comes down to 2 points. Either you control or you execute. What does that mean? When you want to control your market or your competition, you have to have a certain lock-in, or you have to have a certain technology that allows you to create control. Can you think of many technologies that will allow you that? Just so I'm sure we're not completely abstract. Can you think of technology or a choice companies made that allow them to control competition?
Patent.
Very good. Patent is definitely one way. Can you think of something else, which, when I say it's probably quite obvious? Apple
Apple
Store.
Operating system.
Yeah, very good. But very classic is the App Store or Android market, right? You control the technology. You are the gatekeeper of how competition is happening in that ecosystem. On the other side, we have the execution. There it's all about speed, all about going out and capture as much market as you can, no matter what. Classic example here is that was kind of a serious one. Uber, right? No matter what, they didn't care about legislation in certain countries. No matter how many taxi drivers went on strike, they did not care. They went out there and executed. Now they have to pay for it, right? Because they can sold out their culture. They built an identity which many describe as more bullish than an investment bank. Again, you attract certain people. You attract the high school bully, but you might not attract the guy that also is good with talking about certain party people to influence legislation. Right? There's choices you make and you foreclose those. So what does that boil down to? All these 4 choices can basically be mapped into 4 main strategic models. Intellectual property one, which has very high control, and you're kind of trying to collaborate, right? Classic pharmaceuticals. You have high control, but you're very competitive. And we have, again, Android market or Apple OS. We have high collaboration and high execution. You're become a part of a value chain. Sorry. And the last one, disruption, and as you think disruption has heard in the media. That's academic disruption, right? That's the point, but I will talk about that soon. Questions so far, just to make sure I'm not losing you guys.
What's a good examples for the execution for a value chain?
To get to that, we have a whole list of companies there. Yeah. Can you think of one, maybe?
Or disruption Uber.
Okay, we can debate about that. Yeah, it's an interesting point. Are you talking about disruption or about value chain?
Okay, value chain might be, could it be for people, I don't know the companies, but people who look after and manage Airbnb properties?
For example, yes, very good point. Yeah. Okay, we're going to see a few more examples later, and I think then things become a bit more clear. So I'd say, let's jump right in. Now it's getting juicy. Intellectual property. Maybe not very applicable to all of you guys, but very interesting aspect of strategy. Because what it allows you is kind of to create certain lock-in, right? And exploit that. So what does that mean? We talked about that already. But the customers, you want to create new value for existing end users. So let's take a pharmaceutical. They create a painkiller for the existing population that have pain. Right? It's nothing. There's no new market to gain. There's, I don't know, 6 billion people on this planet, 8 billion. There are always like 4 of them have pain. So the technology you choose should be innovative, but to a certain point generalizable. Right? If you're super specialized, it might be very difficult to create a good enough patent or a good enough lock-in that you then create a good enough value creation and value capture hypothesis out of that. It's too specialized and your market becomes too narrow. In terms of identity, you want to become an ideas factory. You want to become the brain that is behind everything of that. You want to be specialized in innovation, kind of is the same, but not totally. And you want to become very good at bargaining. Like you have to have lawyers, you have to have the right business developers that, once it's the point there, can enforce your innovation in a way that it remains exploitable for you. When we talked about that, what companies come to mind for you? Can you make an example?
I can do that.
GSK.
Yeah, very good. Have you heard of any recent patents or so they filed?
Samsung, is it?
Yeah,
Samsung, Apple.
yeah, very
There's
classical.
Yeah.
like,
That's yeah.
but also like Pearson also did the patent thing because like they were like want to target this area, but they didn't have the right, didn't know what to do, so they just hadn't know what things around. So all other companies couldn't go into that market.
Yeah.
So they tapped into like just want to patent all. Absolutely.
It's a very good point, right? So basically every strategy you choose also can have like a dark side. If you become too powerful in that, then you can basically lock out other competitors. You will have competitive. It's kind of weird. Okay, let's look a bit more in detail about that. Here are a few companies that follow that strategy. Harry Potter, weirdly enough, right? But I think what she did, she wrote a book. And that is her IP. Out of that, films come up, Harry Potter Land. I don't know what kind of merchandise, right? But that's the IP and she's exploiting that. Getty Images, employing, I don't know, a few hundred photographers, owning the IP of the picture, that's to these pictures. Xerox, best example ever. It's insane. Basically, every technology we use today, Xerox has a patent for it. It's absolutely insane. They're still in the market, mainly just for that reason, because they own patents and they sell these off to other companies right now. So, because they were in the 80s big and had such a big research lab, they invested particularly in that. They're now still making money on it. Dolby. Dolby Surround, THX, basically selling the technology to make you have a better cinematic experience. And then you remember Family Genentech, pharmaceuticals, mainly focusing on genetic disease and genetic operations on your DNA, aiming right now to build personalizable medicine. Right. The rest is more or less for you to read. It gives a bit more an example, a bit more meat to what we discussed before. This IP strategy, clear, I don't want to spend too much time on that because it's too too relevant for us. Good so far?
Can we ask whether anybody here feels they've got something protected?
Oh yeah, please. If you
We did like this round to see because we had one company that tried to copy us like a corporate.
Yeah.
And one of the we presented idea and through a long process we suddenly want to create the same thing.
Mhm.
But we have our concept is super easy. We don't have a special tech, so
Yeah.
What we can do is like either have try to copy out of the code or like that you can just not run. We have the trademark of the brand that you can just change. So for us, it's like you have to go for the speed and you have to like just make better like the product, but you can't like patent what we have at least.
My experience with intellectual property is that unless I don't think it's applicable to anyone in the room because we don't have the years or the massive bank account to make anything really. It just seems like there's always another way that someone can find a way through to however much you've spent. I mean, because it costs one thing to get the IP, but then to enforce it around the world and stop someone making it in China. I did some research on water treatment and a device kind of structure. And I was basically told by an intellectual lawyer that you could spend tens of thousands on this and they'll just make it in China.
It's quite crazy. So your patent is only as good as the enforceability of it. Yeah, that's pretty much boils down to that. Quickly again, the choices you can make, right? To reiterate, gain control from patent trademarks, copyrights, and for you guys might be possible trade secrets, right? You build something that you just don't tell anyone, and then nobody knows about it. That's kind of your secret sauce. So there's a way to call it IP strategy without disclosing it. Disclosing means you write a patent, so that you get the protection in favor of opening up the technology. And then you have protected for 20, respectively 25 years in this country. But if you just build a trade secret, you have a super crazy cool algorithm, and that's it, right? So that's what, for example, Babylon Health does with their machine learning. That's also a way to drive this kind of strategy.
Because at least for us, that's also something that we saw that maybe you think that people know what you actually do, or like you think it's quite easy, understandable, but you actually on the road and tried and failed, so you know which direction you should go in. If someone is trying to do the same, trade secret is probably really important things.
It is
platforms,
important. But I would be important for that strategy, but almost for every other strategy, right? You have to have something that makes you better, faster, stronger, or the other way. Because if you remember your classic strategy, education, best practices or operational effectiveness is never a competitive advantage, and it's never a strategy. Because that can be copied so easily, especially from people that have money. Right? So if you just, let's say, slightly faster in a certain process, then until they're equally fast or better.
It's not what the internet are doing. Just copy work people just put in a lot of investment on it and they sell it to like eBay, like start eBay in Germany, I think. But then I think eBay have to buy it from them, but it's actually the same thing as eBay, but you just started it.
They did that quite a few times.
Yeah.
But now they're starting, right? As some people would argue, business model innovation is through. There's only that many things that you can, let's say, innovate on within normal means without having super specialized knowledge within the market. And they say that has happened over the last 10 years. There's not much more to innovate now. To make the next step, you have to choose your next technology trajectory. It means you have to have more specialized know-how. So basically, kind of replacing eBay or replacing kind of the replacers.
Mm.
Yeah. Good. Let's move on here. Disruption. Beautiful. Just to make one thing very clear, disruption here, what we mean, is not how you hear it in the media. Have you heard of Clayton Christensen? Okay. So Clayton Christensen is a Harvard professor, and he wrote a few books. First, Innovator's Dilemma. You're an innovator, but how do you bring your product to market? And then very matching, a few years later, I think only to innovator solution. Only by innovator solution, it basically reiterates our areas in innovator's dilemma. Basically, Charlotte, can I use that?
Yeah, of course.
Lovely.
There's a big as well.
Cool. As we all like it, we have 2 dimensions. And we have customer here. So up here, a lot of money. Down here is low cost. Right? Now, almost every company has products that go like that. So they have a certain product line that gives you not a lot of money, and they have a certain product line that gives you a lot. Very classic would be every car manufacturer. Especially conglomerates, let's say VW, they have Skoda down here, they have Porsche, or even Bentley up here. Now, what does disruption mean? Now, disruption means you target customers down here, right? Because that's what you can serve. Let's assume. Right? But you serve customers that are okay with a not perfect and not high-end product. Then you iterate, then somebody can serve these customers. Now, these guys, they'll say, super cool. I like that, right? Because now my curve looks like this. So they move from here to here. High margins, isn't that beautiful? Right? It's cool. Everybody loves that, right? So Skoda, we don't produce that shit anymore. We leave that to this new brand. They should deal with that. We don't care. Here we make double the margin. Nice. Well, you iterated already, and now you're here, right? So suddenly you can start threatening their VW Golf clubs, etc., etc. So what you do basically, you start with an imperfect product, serving clients that are happy with a product that is good enough to serve their needs. Then you get better. Then you take the next step. So just to stay there within the academic realms, Clayton Christensen makes the example of mini mills. You know what mini mills are? So imagine the steel industry, right? These huge furnaces that are running 24 hours, where basically they need their own nuclear power plant to produce enough energy to keep them running. Good. So that's, especially here in the UK, the 80s, how we produce steel. Mini mills came along, and they were shit. They were like the size of that room, maybe, and they could only do rebar. Rebar is that steel thinny that you see on construction sites that put in the ground and put these blanks on top, right? So the shitty steel that's always feels a bit rusty, and you make them a bit thinner and you put them into the concrete models, right? So it holds together. That's rebar. Nothing cool. Top end, sheet steel for the aeronautic industry. That's like high-grade steel, super refined molecules, high pressed, can only be reached with highest temperatures, and then cooling down, highest temperatures again. So mini mills came in, and everyone was like, yeah, sure, let them have rebar. Right? By now, almost every steel corporation is using mini mills because of the last 20, 30 years. They innovated from rebar, and they're now even capable of doing sheet steel. So the big furnaces got replaced. Advantage of the mini mill, you can switch it off during the night. If nobody's working, you just switch it off. If the demand in steel is going down, you switch 3 of them off. No more cost in that. Right? Thus, you can offer cheaper, etc., etc. This may actually cost to a large part the market, among other factors. But yeah, okay, that's disruption. Right? You come in, imperfect product, you iterate, you get better, while your competition leaves you the market because they feel it's non-profitable. That's what actually disruption is. Please.
Just started to make the opposite way around. Like there's a lot of failures about the Tesla car, like crashing or like turning. But there's now they have like cheap car coming, but they started like a more expensive one.
Yeah.
Then they go kind of way around, or
Go the other way around. While you could also argue that Tesla was never, because they went from the beginning for the super high class one. Even so, you could argue that the Roadster back then was imperfect. It was always targeted at people that had a lot of money and wanted a certain perfectness of the product. Now, the product was not per se perfect, but it had other features that made it feel perfect for them in the sense that it was unique and it was able to show off and thus gain value for them, right? And thus they were willing to pay a lot of money for it. So that's kind of, there's a debate going whether Tesla can be seen as disruptive or not in the academic circles. Obviously, the papers they see it as very disruptive.
Could you say that because they're not even the first, they're not obviously not the first electric car, so
No, not at all. No.
so in that way, so they're not disrupting that, but they're disrupting in the sense that they've bothered to try and make it cool and make it high end that no one else has done before.
Yes, you could argue that way. That it's less of an academic argument and more of a, let's say, mainstream argument as disruption is being used. Like, yeah.
Oh, sorry, yeah, I haven't used it.
No, you're perfectly right. Good. From a strategic point of view, what does disruption mean, right? How can we achieve looking for, right? That the red dots and then the next red dot and then the next red dot. So we need to orient ourselves towards competition because that's what we're doing. Competing with existing players invest heavily in execution. To achieve that, we need to be able to do that faster, bigger, better every time we do it. In terms of customers, it's about novel customer combinations. So the mini mills, suddenly people in India and China were able to produce steel as well because the cost was much lower. Right? So you disrupt the whole industry by bringing in new customers as well. And then technology-wise, the trajectory of the mini mill was completely different than those of the furnaces, right? Although to build such a furnace, it took years. Such a high cost thing. Mini mill assembled in a few weeks, thank you very much, up and running. Right? So the whole technology behind it was completely different, giving you different ways of exploitation. Okay. That boils down to value creation, develop a novel isolated value chain. You are serving that, right? You will now own to certain part producers because you are taking their parts, and you certainly own customers because you're serving them with a much better product, better in the sense that it fulfills their need. What kind of company do you want to be disruptive? You want to be, in the sense, creative, but you don't have to be the craziest innovator, right? You can use a technology that is out there, reassemble it, package it new, and make it to a product that serves your customers. You don't have to be the IP guy that has the research lab of 400 people that come up with the newest molecule. You don't have to be that guy. You can be the generic guy that serves people well enough with a generic painkiller. Suddenly, India can afford painkillers and you have a complete new market. How do you capture value? It's mostly by the incumbents. Incumbents mean the existing companies in the market, they lack a response. And that's the beauty about this strategy, right? If you do this right, they will say, yeah, sure, take the low end. Take them. We're happy. We don't have to serve them. It's such a hassle to deal with them. They call up often. They have no idea how to use our product. They're the poorest of the poor. We don't care about them. So they're like, sure. Then you take the next one. They're like, nice as well. They're so demanding. But hey, we only have 3% margin there. They don't know that you might have 11, 12, 15, right? Because your product is cheap or whatever. So they leave it to you until they realize that you've taken most of their market. It's too late. Because then you have become established. You are now the new brand to do that. So let's look at that a bit more in detail. So again, fast speed to market, imperfect product is tolerated by users. Remember Netflix in the beginning? That was shit, let's be honest, right? That was not cool. Even now, it's not super. It is good. It serves our purpose. It gives us entertainment. But if I go to I don't know, a library, I have probably more films there. Or if I download illegally, I have more films there than on Netflix. But it's good enough that I pay the subscription because it's 1080p, and let's be honest, there's only that many series I can actually watch. In the beginning, it only had very few things, right? They bought in series that they saw were downloaded often illegally, put them on first because there were sometimes series from the 70s, but people wanted to watch them again because childhood dreams or whatever. And before that, it was actually a DVD sending business, right? But basically saying, again, it allows you to target customers that are happy with the impact product and that are underserved right now. Right? So before Netflix, you had to send the DVDs. Suddenly there was a streaming. You don't have to go through the hassle of sending the signals back and forth. New technology has curved the trajectory. Iterative, right? As we said over there, you do something, you learn from them, you go to the next one. Do something, learn from them, go to the next one. So it's iterative development of your technology. And you then develop this new value chain. Again, Netflix, in the beginning, they started partnering up with US postal services. Then they bought their own service. Then, oh shit, Amazon is actually coming up. And they switched to Amazon to bring costs down. Now they're back to their own stuff again to leverage content. In terms of identity, no capacity for rapid experimentation, obviously, otherwise you can't do that. Target on unoccupied position. See the red dot? The first one? Deliberately, I didn't paint it on the green line. You have to go where they are not yet, or where they say, I want for us. You can start there, and they will leave you alone. And leveraging these systems to explain for the market inertia, exactly what we said before, they will be too slow to react.
And this is a really good example of how they managed to like change with the digitalization of films, because Blockbuster and Netflix, they were like kind of fighting, but Blockbuster, I don't know how many stores left, but Netflix managed and are increasing a lot.
Yeah, that's the perfect example. Actually, there are apparently meeting notes of Blockbuster executives saying, no, we're not going into that market, we are a DVD business. And that happens many, many times in other industries as well, right? Doing exactly that. But then again, who can you blame, right? That's this famous quote of Henry Ford, when you ask people today what they want, it's faster horses, right? Often people lack the imagination to see beyond what they know in their current ecosystem. Thus, you get that. But that's exactly the market inertia that you can use to take the next step. Because you see something they don't.
Or Kodak that actually was the first company with the digital camera. Yeah. They didn't want to like, oh, that's not important. Yeah. Just continue what we.
Yeah, because their main business was cameras, right? That was a very lucrative business. So it's exactly that. Other companies on there, Amazon, what did they replace? What was their industry they? Bookstores, very good. Netflix we just talked about. Zipcar, right? What industry are they in?
Transport.
Yeah, more precise.
Car clubs. Sharing economy.
Yeah, but what do they? What is the green line they try to disrupt?
Car makers.
Car makers?
Yes,
Why?
not because they're trying to tell people you're better off not owning a car altogether.
Okay, yeah.
So don't pay the MOT, don't pay the tax, don't pay the price to BMW or whoever you buy a car from.
Okay.
And just pick up a car and leave it.
Okay, but that would mean car makers would still be needed, right?
Less, a lot less.
Okay, yeah. Valid point. I want to go somewhere else.
Car rental business?
Yes, car rental, exactly. So basically you see the similarity there is much closer. They hate the convenience of going to Zipcar. It's just there. Instead of driving maybe to the airport or to the next big station where they take you out of town almost into that gated thingy, and then you have to wait, and oh shit, there's a little thingy. You have to pay now £100 extra for nothing. That's the main industry disruption. car maker is an interesting point actually, because many car brands, they go into that industry themselves, right? Drive Now, you know that? You know about that? BMW, exactly. They're not that big here yet, but if you go to Germany, Berlin, Munich, Drive Now is everywhere, and it's freaking convenient. And now they started partnering up with other brands. So you go into Drive Now, you find, I don't know, a little box of chocolates from this new chocolate startup and stuff like that, right? So there's a car makers owning now part of that disruptive industry to basically push against the car rental businesses.
Ticking clock on how long
Yeah,
we
obviously,
survive,
right?
because we're
But
gonna
that's the beauty, right? You always have to come up with a new technology trajectory to stay relevant. If you once you go over it, well, then you start having problems, right? But that's when you stay iterative. You will find always ways to how do we take the next step. That's kind of the beauty about this kind of strategy. Salesforce, what did they disrupt?
Sales process,
To a certain point, yeah.
business structure.
Yeah. Actually, they disrupted big ass CRM systems. It's a technical term. So before that, the CRM system was installed on a huge Oracle database, hosted on your premises, right? That costs you thousands of thousands per year to operate. Salesforce suddenly, I don't know, I think it started $39.90 per user. Sign up in the cloud, accessible everywhere. Now they're in Salesforce Tower, Liverpool Street. So pretty good. Skype, what did they disrupt?
Video conference.
Telephone.
Yeah,
Classic telephone lines, actually. It's weird, right? So you think of that as an industry. But same back maybe, actually, like 20 years, 25 years, and privatized. Before that, mostly was state-owned. Guy then rode after that wave. They are like toys. They're not a new startup. Cool. Good. Let's move on. I like it. Quickly recap. Choose your competition. Fast speed to market, imperfect product. Focus on novel value creation for novel customer combinations. So you got that going to India. And innovate along technology S-curve. Iterate. Huh? Cool.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
Do you actually choose your competition? You enter a market, then the competition is just there.
No, for example. You choose whether you start down here or up here. Right? That choice, you are in a completely different field of competition. So you can actually choose to a certain point where and who you want to compete against. Do you want to serve enterprise software business, or do you want to serve SMBs? Then you have to deal with the whole long tail. But it's a choice you make.
Okay.
Yes.
You're going to go through different. You talk about disruption and before that IP and whatever else. And here you're talking about choosing the importance of choosing your competition.
Yeah.
You want them to be unresponsive.
In that case, yes.
When you give this kind of profile of entrepreneurship and the choices that you make, have you ever thought of weighting these different factors out of 10? And actually trying to, because we're sitting here and we're like, okay, that's important, that's also important. Actually take an idea and say, okay, I'm going to score it a 9 on this, to 8 on this, or is that just too simplistic?
It is a bit too simplistic and often doesn't work out.
So it's been people try these sorts of things, and really there's an alchemy to combinations of factors.
At the end of the presentation, we're going to talk a bit about how to choose a strategy. But now that we own it, so basically what you do is you make a cost-benefit analysis, right? What are your resources right now? What can you actually do? And what is possible for you to execute? It might turn out IP strategy is not even possible for you because A, you lack the technology, or you lack the resources to file a patent. So this is already a strategy you might not be able to execute. Then you think, okay, what are my other possibilities? And then you think, okay, with what I have right now, who can I compete against? Who can I serve? And what's the technology that I can iterate on? Then already you have a certain, from here, you're already down here. It's less about a mathematic grading.
More about crossing off routes.
Yeah, that's the point, right? Whatever you choose, you cross off other things. And thus, I would say it's very important that you experiment as well, not just in terms of being disruptive, but in terms of which strategy suits you, right? So what we normally recommend is choose two, make the cost-benefit analysis and see, I can do either value chain, talk about it in a bit, or maybe I'm even a bit more disruptive, right? I own more of the value chain already. I can disrupt certain customer segments, or I can disrupt certain industry aspects. Go for that. Experiment on those to a certain point. Say, okay, we had certain success with this, certain success with that, but now we're going to go with this, and then execute on that. Right? It's very important that you stick with your strategy to a certain point. But it's also important that you experiment before, because, as we just said, every choice you make forecloses another path. That might be very, very difficult to revert, because then you're already in the market, you build your product, your resources, your whole organization towards a certain goal. Now, to shift that into that is very, very difficult. There are very few companies that do that successfully. One example is Nestle, under Peter Brabeck, their God in the last 10, 15 years. They shifted from becoming one monolithic company into basically a holding with brands that are their own profit centers. So Langnese, Nesquik, etc., they're now owned companies within the company, and they're steered, maneuvered, all completely independently. Yes, they have a certain strategy from top of Nestle, but the rest is on markets they want to enter, etc. And then if they say we don't go for that market, then Nestle provides them with the umbrella to go into that market faster, better, offer them shelf space, whatever, but to make the decision going to a certain market, that's up to the brand. But that took them about 6 years to come into a way of how to compete in certain markets. They can do it because they have the money. But for you as entrepreneurs, that's very, very difficult. Thus, experiment on which way you want to go. Start talking to big enterprise. Start talking to SMBs, right? Find out which customers you want to serve. Maybe you find, hey, big enterprise has sales cycles of 1.5 years because of budgeting, because of holidays, whatever. And you talk to 3 different people in that time. Is that really something you want to do? Can you sustain that? Whereas with SMBs, you might talk to the founder and owner directly, and you have the sales closure within 2 weeks because you can make a decision. These are things you need to find out that has influence on your pricing. Big enterprise, they don't take you serious if your product is too low priced. They're like, what is that shit? It's not even worth finding a form of a purchasing form or whatever for that little price. As soon as you price it at, I don't know, like 50K a year, they're like, ooh, that sounds interesting, right? But can you then deliver, right? Do you have the right technology to that pricing? So it's these choices combined that in the end define your strategy. It's also something you can experiment, and you should experiment on and iterate. Once you have something, execute, then go with it. Does that kind of answer the question? Cool. We're through with that, but I think I only talk about identity for disruption because I feel here it's kind of the most important thing. Build capacity for lean experimentation. What does that mean? How can you be disruptive? Salesforce hires people that don't do anything customer serving. They only do research. So does Facebook. Amazon has one of the biggest research departments. Many researchers even complain that research becomes privatized because governments are pulling out funding. Now, is that a good or bad thing? But it allows these companies to stay nimble and on the forefront of the technology trajectory. It's very important for you that I don't say from the beginning go into the biggest research department you can imagine. But keep it in the back of your mind that it should be part of your identity. You want to be ready for that. And target or occupy position, that's also something you want to do because that brings uncertainty with you. Right? If no one else is there, who do you measure against? How do you know whether you're good or not? So you want to be able to deal with uncertainty to a certain point. You isolate yourself, right? It's also difficult to tell your parents why you're doing that because they're like, what are you actually doing? You can't say, oh yeah, we do the same with GSK. No, you're doing something quite different, right? And reasoning about that might not always be easy, but it increases lead time towards departments, right? When you're not on the same line, until they're there, you've already made the next step, right? And then the biggest thing I think is for that, like take advantage of the hidden weaknesses in current established firms, be a catalyst for creative disruption in the industry. So again, established companies, they have processes, they have sales cycles. Until someone can decide something, it has to go up 3